Hi, and welcome to the Higher Education Access Corner. I'm your host, Tiffanie DeVan, and joining me today, I have PHEAA's Chief Privacy Officer, Jennie Thompson, as well as Chris Mowl, who is with Harrisburg University, and he is the Director of Financial Aid Services there. Today, we're going to be talking about data privacy and how students, their parents, and just anyone who's listening in can protect their information, learn how to avoid scams. What we're going to do is we're going to dig right into the topic because it is a hardy topic. It's a popular topic, and it's one that I can personally say I've been affected by just recently with my own data. So I am excited to have you all here. Welcome to the Higher Education Access Corner.
Thank you, Tiffanie. I appreciate you having us and giving us the opportunity to utilize the podcast to celebrate 2023 Data Privacy Day.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Look forward to hopefully helping out a lot of students today. So.
All right. So one of the other good things about you all being here today is that we're going to promote Celebrating 2023 Data Privacy Day, which is actually going to be an event that is held at Harrisburg University on Friday, January 27th. It's an all-day event that is going on where we have several different topics focusing on data privacy, several different speakers, I believe. Data Privacy Day, I did learn is actually an annual thing. It's technically January 28th of every year, but it's going to be celebrated by you all on the 27th just to get the program going. So I think that's a great effort. Just to get started, how about you all what is data privacy? If we can kind of kick off with that, explain to our listeners, what exactly is it?
Sure. Data privacy at its core is really the right to be left alone. And you see this really playing out, without getting too philosophical, you see this really playing out across the European landscape where they take privacy, I would say, a bit more seriously than we do here in the United States. You're starting to see a lot of legislation both at the state and the federal level in terms of giving consumers more opportunities and more transparency to actively manage their data and to be able to choose more carefully who they give their information to. So it's also partly understanding and being able to make informed decisions about those entities to whom you may consider giving your information. Understanding how that information is going to be used by that entity, if they will be sharing it or selling your information to an affiliate or non-affiliate, and how that information is going to be protected while they're in possession of your information. So really it's about giving the consumer the opportunity to be in the driver's seat and control how their information is obtained and used and shared.
And as you were saying that, honestly, I was thinking when we're talking data privacy is protecting from someone just stealing it. But it's not just that. It's not just someone stealing it. It's about every time someone asks you for an email address. It's sort of like what you're saying. Can we have your email address? You're in a store. You're, signing up for something else. They say yes, and then you get this blast of emails. And then sometimes you'll see, well, why am I getting all these extra emails from all these other entities? So I'm thinking that ties into what you're saying. You're in the driver's seat. No, I don't consent to giving my information to everyone. That's good to know because I was really only thinking on the other side of them stealing my information. So why does everyone want your information? I guess, we know what it is. People want your information. Why do they want our information?
Our information is just as valuable as we are as individuals, sometimes more valuable depending on what that information may be. I know that there is a thought out there that if it's free, then you are the product, but that doesn't necessarily just to equate when you're being offered a free product or service. Even when you're paying for that product or service, you yourselves can be the product. Companies want to get a hold of your information because it's very powerful. It says a lot about you as a consumer and can sometimes paint a more accurate and detailed picture of you than you yourself could give if we just sat you down and talked to you. Think about all the times that we give up our information, whether it's going to the doctor's office. Today we're talking about the higher education experience, interacting in social media. We're constantly giving out information whether or not we recognize that, and companies are using that to their benefit in order to be able to drive business decisions, be able to make money, right, and develop products and services.
And so when we're talking about the different information that they give and that they're getting, once they get it, and I don't know if you're going to talk about this a little later, if let's say I don't want them to have my information, are we going to tackle that? How much control do I have in pulling back?
That is a great question, Tiffany, and one that I think we should all be actively thinking about, thinking very critically before we click that button and decide to hand over the information. And for reputable businesses, if you go to a site, for example, and you're on their site, and before you even give information away, it's important, scroll down to the bottom of that website and see if you can locate that business's privacy policy and understand, why are they asking me to give up this information? What are they going to be doing with it? But then the other thing is understanding when you can and cannot opt out of providing certain information. There may be a legitimate business reason why that entity is asking for the information, but there also might be opportunities where you can tailor and customize the collection and sharing of your information so that it meets your personal preferences and comfort level.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And kind of connecting to the higher education experience somewhat with colleges and universities. Sometimes we want your data to measure student outcomes, whether it be, where you got your job, what your major was, and things like that. So there are consent capabilities for students as well as when they're a student if they want to release that information later. Surveys after they graduate, things like that.
I think that's a really important aspect. That consent is so important, and oftentimes what I find in our hurried lives is we don't necessarily take the time to review the privacy policy and really understand the implications of giving away the information before we click and start typing in.
I agree. And
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
From a student standpoint, sometimes you get the opportunity to, like you said, it's, you can click and just let it all go, which some people they just want to get through it. But, sometimes with students especially, there might be like targeted consent on what they want to release and what they don't. And that will require a little more work sometimes for them to do that, but it's worth it in the end.
And actually I was kind of going to chime into you to say, do you think the students are even paying attention to that? Because it's big with students, and a lot of times students are so used to social media, they just click and they keep going. But
I think they are, and it's because I think we've heard the term before, digital natives, that a lot of our students have grown up in technology. So they're more aware of these things, I think, than we think. But they're also, you mentioned social media, they're also maybe prone to, all right, if I click consent to this, I get a $50 gift card, hooray. But they're not looking at what was maybe being released. So I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay. And then what about their parents? And I don't know if you'll know that. So do you find that parents are a little bit more resistant to participate in surveys or to share their information, or?
I do, more so than students, definitely. And, we don't, for example, when you're filling out applications, a lot of students, if they're a dependent student, parent information is required. So I still deal with this to this day, where parents are hesitant to, I give the government enough. I don't want to give them more. So, that does require a conversation sometimes. So I think parents would be more, they're more guarded.
I agree. And I think adults in general, in some cases, because we did not kind of grow up in that same
We're not
age.
digital,
Yeah. Me personally, I can say I'm a skeptic when it comes to everything. So even where like once a year you have to go to the doctors and you're signing the HIPAA statements and, all of the consent forms, a lot of times it's almost like a click of a button and they give you a little pad. They say, okay, you're signing this, but I don't see the screen. And I'm like, I need to see the screen. I need to know what I'm signing. I need to read the whole thing. And they're like, well, it just says this. I'm like, okay, do you mind if I read it though? Because that's just the way my brain is wired. Whereas a lot of other folks are just, okay. Yeah. I know I have to do it. I do too, but I need to know, I need to see it. And usually they'll say, well, here, we'll print you out a copy. And I'm like, okay, I'm good with that. They don't have my signature on it. So I was interested to see if parents are a little bit more guarded as opposed to, or more older adults who didn't grow up with the technology and the, like what you call it, the digital.
Digital natives referred to. They since the time they were born, and I think defined it's anybody born after 1984 or something like that, because then they grew up, they were in school, high school.
Not me.
When that's not me either.
That's not me.
But when the internet came on board, basically.
Gotcha. Yeah. So when we're talking data privacy, the whole higher education experience, we'll kind of move into that. What are some of the common scams targeting students nowadays? Can you, either of you?
There's a
never-ending I think, a list of examples that we could provide, but I think for today's discussion, we want to focus on those that really revolve in and around the financial aid process. We're going to give some links where people can get more information, but I think today we had a couple that we wanted to go through.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if we want to start with scholarship scams, I mean, as a financial aid director and counselor, that's one of the first things I get from students is, where can I find additional assistance? So in the scholarship world, we have, perhaps you're coming from an institution where you have institutional scholarships, that's money from the university or the college, but students are frequently, especially high school juniors and seniors, they're starting that research for what we refer to as outside or private scholarships, organizations or associations that are going to maybe give them a check to help them with school. And there are a lot of fine organizations out there that want to help students. Unfortunately, there's a group that is not. They're interested in scamming or fraud, and not necessarily, fraud to that extent, but maybe just getting data, you know what I mean, and violating that privacy that we talk about. So, so unfortunately, there are a lot of what we refer to as scholarship scams in the industry that are out there for students.
You mentioned that, and some of the things that we do when we're presenting and we're talking to students and families during our financial aid nights, a lot of times we're talking about types of financial aid, and we get to the scholarship piece. One of the common questions that we usually get is, well, can you provide some scholarship sites for us? And those, we have quite a few that are reputable that we know about, but we also talk about scholarship scams and make sure you're avoiding this. Don't just give out your social security number to anyone randomly. No, don't give them your credit card information, because some scholarship applications will say, hey, we need your credit card information, we need your social security number.
That's the big one.
And we usually say those are red flags. Like, no, you don't want to do that. So I do know our listeners, especially those who are either parents or students and they're looking for scholarships, or maybe there's someone who knows of students who are looking for scholarships. I always think it's important to remind them to be careful and be mindful of the scams, because they definitely do exist, and not every site is a reputable site. It may appear to be a reputable site. Sometimes we'll notice like one word is misspelled or lots of misspellings in those words, in the things like that. So those are definitely some things that happen.
They try to tailor their sites to look like they're legit. That is very common. But that was a great example. Sometimes you'll see a punctuation or something that's off. But that is also, Tiffany, you mentioned wanting your credit card or a payment of some kind of form upfront. That is the biggest red flag that there is. You should not. The whole process of applying for financial aid in the higher ed experience is free across the board. The federal application is free. If there's college and universities that still potentially charge an application fee, there's no charge to apply for financial aid, though. So there is going to be, when a company or something is asking you, saying, hey, you pay us $50, we assure you we'll find you $500. It's not legit. It's fraud. Right. Or they'll say, we guarantee that you will get some financial aid. And at the end, some folks will say, well, the only thing they told me I'm eligible for is a federal student loan. Well, guess what? You were eligible for that anyway. Possibly could have been eligible, and you didn't need this organization to tell you that. And completing the FAFSA and going to studentaid.gov, you're going to see this information for free, like you stated. So again, those are good points as well. And that's kind of branching out from scholarships too. I mean, there are, we can call them legit companies or whatever that parents or students can hire to help them through the process. Maybe some families need that. I'm not a fan of them because they do charge you, and it's just not. The whole process is free and should be free.
The other thing I'd like to add about that, when you employ a third party to handle your financial aid process, you are giving them keys to the castle, right, to your information. And what we've seen from a loan servicing perspective is sometimes those third parties are changing account demographics, like address, telephone number, and email address, for our customers to divert important communications and information away from the customer. So it really takes the student and the parents out of the driver's seat and being able to understand and have transparency into what is going on. For example, if they have a loan that needs to be repaid, or even a grant or some other type of free aid. I think it's incredibly important to have that first person transparency and be able to understand what's going on with your account on a day-to-day basis.
For data privacy and protecting your data, that's absolutely a good point.
So you brought this up. What is your take on that parent? Because I hear this a lot. Some parents and some students will say, well, you know what? Here's a company, and it might be a legitimate company who's going to take care of it for us. You know what? I don't have the time. I'm overwhelmed with this process. They're going to file our FAFSA. They're going to pull up certain scholarships for us. They're going to fill this stuff out, and at the end, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get this. Every service that these organizations are offering as far as completion of the forms and things like that, they can get that information for free. But sometimes the sell for the parent or the student but it's the convenience and the efficiency. And you get some who do it and they're totally happy with it. And there are others that said, hey, I didn't realize this price tag was going to be as hefty as it is, and I don't think it's worth it. What do you guys recommend, or do you recommend anything one way or the other to the student and the parent who says, I'm going to use this service?
Well, I'm a financial aid counselor. You know what I'm going to say. Call me. You know what I mean? I get paid. You don't have to pay me. But I mean, I understand why maybe some families and Jennie, we talked about like med students or whatever that so they get down the road, they make enough money, they want to hire somebody to take care of everything for them, and it is a legit company potentially, but everything that they're doing on your behalf is a free service. You know what I mean? If you need, if you have, we're getting off topic, if you have student loans and you're going to go to med school and you need a school deferment for a year to stop payments just to help, that company will take care of all of that for you for the fee that you're paying it. But you can get online and do it yourself for completely free. So I definitely have a biased opinion on that. That's why financial aid counselors are here.
Yeah, Chris, I would definitely tend to agree with you. Certainly there's a privacy trade-off, right? You're going to be sharing that information with a third party. There's some opportunity there, that you may not understand exactly how that information is being used or safeguarded. Certainly you can review their privacy notices, but that's just another entity that has your information. Right. We also have to consider the cost trade-off as well, in addition to the privacy trade-off. Again, there are free resources within the financial aid community. There are also free resources that we offer here at PHEAA. So everything that we're talking about is something that you yourself can do for free. It's just that time investment. So I would say if someone is going to go down that road, just be very careful and choose have an educated decision-making process. Do your independent research. Maybe visit the Better Business Bureau website. Look at the CFPB. They're very active in analyzing consumer complaints about businesses and things like that. So there are definitely places where you can go to verify whether or not that entity is going to actually perform the service that you're intending to receive.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Jennie, because we kind of maybe got off topic a little bit, but we're talking about scholarships, Sam, and just making sure something or someone is legit. Whether it's a scholarship site or whether it's a consultant or whatever. You mentioned some good resources for students and families to have. But remember, the financial aid office itself is somebody you can contact if you have if you're looking at something. If I don't know off the top of my head, I'm going to take the steps to find out for that family, is this legit? And we have ways to do that. PHEAA is an excellent resource sometimes. Guidance counselors at the high schools, they do a lot of work with outside scholarship organizations for their students that are in high school. So there are other resources to look at, ones that you can just pick up the phone and call that can help out with that. And
I'm glad you said that, because a lot of times in talking to families, they don't consider the schools that resource. They're thinking, oh, well, no, they're just there to process my aid, tell me what I got, and keep moving. And then once they learn that, no, they are a trusted source. They're okay with, you contacting them. They will assist you. And I think that's something that students and families end up really appreciating, but they don't always know that is an available service from the post-secondary schools.
It really
well.
is, and it's a message I always try to get out at open houses or anything. We have college administration. You have registration of records. You have your student accounts office or whatever. Financial aid is a unique club that I became a member of long ago, and there's truly a spirited. Every financial aid counselor has that spirit. They want to do the best for their student. I'm not saying other offices don't, but financial aid is unique in everything that we do, and we're always looking to help out students and families. So never be afraid to reach out to your financial aid office or any financial aid office. I speak to, we do a lot of events, Tiffany, where we speak to high school students, prospective students, and they're starting to learn that path of what it means to go to college. And, I'll say, hey, even if you never come here, give me a call if you need help. I'll be glad to help.
Great resource. So let's circle back around because we did start out talking about the different types of scams. You mentioned scholarships. Were there any additional types of scams that target students that you all wanted to talk about?
Aside from scholarships, we kind of got on the topic of, student loans is another, potential. Now we're we're getting a little bit kind of beyond school, like we talked about consultants and, the student loan world, there's scammers out there as well that are trying to, if you need other financial aid to potentially, pay for school or pay for college, there are private student lenders we talk about, and, the federal government has additional resources and whatever. So again, the same things we talked about before, how to find out. It's kind of the same if you do a Google search or whatever, you might recognize some bank names that come up. You're going to see a bunch that you don't recognize that are offering you the deal of the century, all right? Those have the potential to be scams, to get your data, whatever's needed. So again, you have resources available to you to verify.
Yeah. I would say if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, right? That's the key there. The other one that we talked about, Chris, was the unpaid tuition scam, where we know that parents and students are getting phone calls from scammers claiming that they have a bill due at the school. And these are always certainly accompanied by that sense of urgency. If you don't pay the bill, your child or you will be withdrawn from school. So what's the best way that a parent can address that, or a student when they get one of these calls?
It's very similar to the IRS scams that you hear. You know what I mean? Where the IRS has called me and said, you owe this amount in town. You don't pay now, we're coming to get you or whatever. So it does put the student family in an uncomfortable position. The simple solution there is to contact the school's student account office or financial aid. I got this call, I got this email, I got this letter. Is this legit? And if a student tells me they got an email or a letter of some kind on a phone call, I'll say forward that to me, and I will look at it, review it with my business office director, and we'll see that. It is unfortunate, and it is because there are students and families that either leave school or move school, and they do leave with a balance, and they're sent notices, but then it winds up in collection. So now you're not getting a call from the university, you're getting a call from a collection company, which is strange. So either way, whether that's the instance or not, we are always able to verify it. So call the student account office first thing.
Always go back to the original source. It's kind of what I'm hearing. If you're getting a call from a third party, or you're getting a car and you're calling, you're thinking this is a little suspect, if you go back to your original creditor or whoever owes the debt, they can tell you, hey, this is who we've contracted, if it's now with the third party, or you can kind of say, yes, this is legit or not legit. And that applies to everything, not just, the students, the graduates, just in general. I would say, that applies. And I'll even say, kind of going off a little bit, but not too far, that happened to me personally. So here's a personal story with one of my own financial institutions. It had nothing to do with student loans or anything, just my credit card. And I kept getting a call that kept coming in from my financial institution early on a Sunday morning. And I'm thinking, these are just telemarketers calling and they're changing the name. Well, it wasn't. It was really their fraud services department. And when they're calling me, they're saying, hey, we noticed some purchases here that seem out of the order for you. And they're, starting in PA and they're moving down to Maryland. Is this you? I'm like, no. So they're like, okay, well, if you verify this, this, and this, then we'll move forward. So for me, my first thing is I don't know that this is legit. So I said, okay, how about I do this? I'll call you right back. So then I just logged on my own, found the fraud services department directly from their real website, called them back. and they were legit. So they were like, yeah, and that was a good thing. And the lady apologized. She said, you know what, I should have told you to do that in the beginning because you wouldn't have known whether I was the scammer or not, because people scam you that way or not. But my point was, I went back to the original source. I didn't just answer and just say, okay, sure. Well, yeah, here's my password, here's my this, or here's my PIN number for us to then be able to move forward. So that was something that I learned, I think, early on, just to say, no, I need the real source. But again, whether it's the financial aid office, whether it's, you know, a credit card company, or a financial institution, go to your original source to get verification.
That's a great example, Tiffany, overall. And that, just give you another person, I think it was a few weeks ago, I got a text message that it just said, you know, my bank name, fraud alert, click here. You know what I mean? And for a split second, I'm like, oh no. And then I stopped, went back to the original source, my bank, and they said, no, we didn't send anything. So, yeah.
But there again, that scammer is preying on that sense of urgency. Yeah. Oh my goodness, my credit has been breached, or someone is using my credit card without my authorization. Creating that sense of urgency, where if we just took 5 seconds, that's the general rule, just give yourself 5 seconds to really think through critically, should I click on that link, or should I do what Tiffany did, which is the right approach, and is going directly to that entity's website and then contacting them using that information to verify.
Kind of another reason why, as you were kind of circling back in the beginning, why should data privacy matter to you? Because people can do some other things with your, you know, your identity and who you are, and who knows where they're going with it.
Absolutely. Think of your information, your personal information, as the keys to your castle. You wouldn't give away the keys to your home to a stranger, right? Without questions, without wanting assurance that everything is going to be, you know, done on the up and up, right? So think of your personal information as being the keys to your castle, because if you hand that information over to just one scammer, one bad party, that can create a chain reaction of events that can take you sometimes years to unravel and to get yourself away from. So it's always good to pause and ask yourself, should I be clicking this? Should I be, you know, giving these people a call?
Definitely something to think about on just how to avoid it in general. Any other key 2 or 3 things you can think of on how to avoid being targeted, how to make sure your information is secure and protected? I know with me, when I think about things, or being careful just when you're going to the ATM machine, you know, when you're popping in your PIN number or things like that. Also with the newer credit cards where it's just a tap thing, you want to make sure that it's not easily accessible to some folks, because they say there are devices that can scam them. I know those are some things where they'll say, you know, really kind of pocket them in between other pieces of information. Don't just make that like at the outside of your, some people have it on their keys, like the little wallet piece, and you see the credit card sitting out. There are scanner devices, is what I've heard. Don't know if all this stuff is legit or not legit, but that there are scanner devices that can just pull your information and read it, and then they can go make a new card. So those are some things I've been told, you know, hold off on just whipping that card out. Make sure you look at your surroundings, you know where people are, because they can pull your information and recreate it. And I was told like in seconds it can happen, and someone can make a charge in another country just as quickly as they could right here. Anything else you guys can think of? Because if not, then I'll kind of pivot into the, you know, what do you do after you've been scammed? But I want to give you an opportunity if we've missed anything on how to avoid.
Well, I would say the last big topic I would want to hit on is staying safe online, right? So we talked about being very careful and as to who we give our information to, but it's also about actively protecting your own information, right? And I think about the higher education experience. You have your account with the school. You may have an account with PHEAA if you've gotten free aid or student loan. You know, it's very important to safeguard that information. That includes creating long passwords that are unique. Password phrases are incredibly helpful. So creating something that is unique and long, not using your date of birth, your dog's name, those sort of things. But I would say also in addition to that, because we live our lives so much online, that having a password manager is very, very helpful, because we can never remember all of our individual passwords. But having that manager where all of the passwords for the different online sites are stored in that manager, and then you just need to access your password manager, that is incredibly helpful, and it's way more secure than writing your passwords down on a Post-it note.
So what is a password manager? Like, is it like an app, or?
Yeah, it could be an app, and again, that manager is intended to store all of your credentials for any various websites that you might frequent or where you have an account.
Okay.
And once you access your password manager, you just look for that website and your credentials are stored there. So it's really like a lockbox for your credentials.
And I'll be honest, those things kind of still scare me too, because I'm like, well, what if someone then like taps into the app and then they have all of my stuff? So there's that other person who didn't grow up with, doing all of these things, but I'm sure it's encrypted and it's safe. But for the skeptic who says, don't do that, what's the best thing? Like, put it on in a secure place, write it down in a secure place in your home, or?
It always comes down to user preference and comfortability, right? And that's not going to work for everyone, but I would say as someone who has a lot of passwords, I couldn't manage without the password manager. It just makes my life so much easier. And then all I need to do is remember that one password, right? So as soon as I get into my encrypted password manager, then I can safely access all of my website credentials.
I'm going to work on that. I'm going to work on being comfortable.
Give it a try. Here's the other thing. Again, make sure that you have a long, unique passphrase for your password manager, but then it's really important to also manage your accounts that you have, right? Including apps that you might have on your phone. So if you have a password manager, you should be regularly looking at that, changing the password. As with any app or site, do I need to continue having this account, or is this something that I can dismantle? So I think just having also that maintenance with the sites that you're using is incredibly helpful too. Keep those passwords nice and secure.
I'm truly going to work on that, because what I end up doing is I usually go to the link that says forgot password, because I have so many.
You can do that as well.
It's annoying though. So
it is annoying,
if I can
but
actually manage to do that a little bit better through a password manager, that will probably help me out.
So I was going to say, the fact that you're potentially a skeptic is already a big step towards being aware.
That's true.
Of your data privacy. And I think that's the point of this podcast, is to make sure people are aware of these things. So the fact that you are a skeptic is good. You've already taken steps towards data privacy awareness. So.
All right. So for that person who has been scammed now, what do they do? Like, what can they do? Something happens, where do we go? I
think it depends on like the what the scam is and the level of scam. I mean, if you've, for example, if you've been scammed on a scholarship, association, or organization, I mean, any kind of scam, especially if you've lost money or if you've had your data privacy violated, it doesn't hurt to call your local police office, to also notify your bank or any kind of credit cards. But you definitely want to, in some form, report to make it aware, to help out others, so it doesn't help to you. And the U.S. Department of Education has several entities on its website that kind of talks about these things, especially the Office of Inspector General. They have, if this happened to you, call here, click on this link, report here. For example, the Federal Trade Commission, if you've been scammed specifically by a scholarship, they want to know about it. So there are links and things on that website to report. So getting the word out is very important, but it's also important, Jenny, I'm sure you can follow, to protect yourself. And that's where notifying your bank, credit card, if you got to put a lock on anything, and definitely calling the local police to make them aware of it.
And I would say in addition to that, one of the first things that you should do, certainly if this is an account related issue, is change those account credentials right away to stop the flow of information or access into your account. Do that. I would also say let your school know. And certainly it's situational,
Yes.
right, Chris? But there may be instances where you've experienced a scam and there could be other students or parents at that school who may be also being targeted. So I think raising awareness with your financial aid office is incredibly helpful. I would also say for folks in the state of Pennsylvania, our Bureau of Consumer Protection also has a website, scams@attorneygeneral.gov, where you can submit if you have been a victim of a scam. They want to provide support and services to you. So I would recommend that also contact your Attorney General office, no matter what state you're located in.
And throwing in a link too from the federal side, I mentioned the Department of Education. Everything starts at studentaid.gov. You can link to anything within the Department of Education from there. So that's kind of the home base for federal financial aid. The other thing I kind of missed on, I want to talk about. So this only isn't who to notify, but also for prevention. Credit bureaus. You know what I mean? You want to notify your credit bureaus if you're the victim of fraud or a scam. And then also, as far as going back a little bit to scam prevention, you want to check your credit, run your credit every few times a year at least, just to see everything, any kind of debt, any kind of thing that you have that's due is going to show up on that credit report, and you have the ability to check it to make sure it's all legit. So,
but there are even alert monitoring systems that you can have
that would be
put into play either through the credit bureau or through others. Some financial institutions offer the service where you're connected to them and you can actually see what your credit report looks like, but you can see if it's taken a dive. I know that happened with someone in particular, and her credit was always pretty much even killed, pretty decent credit, and then the next month it just took a hit, and she kept getting alerts, but she wasn't paying attention because she's thinking she hadn't done anything. And then when she actually went on there to look, it was actually a mistake. Someone had entered her information and incorrectly opened up an account, and they were able to get it fixed. And she's like, how did this happen? She doesn't know how it happened. She's thinking it wasn't a mistake, and they were like, no, it really was a mistake. Nonetheless, by her having that alert on there, she knew that something did go wrong. So that's another thing. Another source that we have just through PHEAA. So on our website at PHEAA.org, we have an online ordering platform, and all of our materials are totally free. We actually have a brochure. It's called Avoiding Identity Theft. It is totally free for anyone to, someone wants us to mail it to them, we'll mail it to them. They just enter their information, or if they just want to pull it up online, and it gives them tips on how to avoid scams, things to look for, and to make sure that their information is protected. So that's also a good resource that I wanted to point out as well. You all mentioned great resources as well. One thing I think is a little is interesting from a financial aid standpoint, and if you can just explain this. So, because I get this question a lot. I am a parent, and I'm calling in about my child's financial aid information or admissions information or anything like that. I want to know about the grades. They didn't get them. I want to know about, why is this bill showing up? Because I'm pretty sure that I gave my child what they needed in order to do this. Can I just call up and get information, or is there information
you cannot.
private? Right.
We're very strict, and I'm speaking on behalf of Harrisburg University. We're very careful with the Federal Educational Rights and Privacy Act, commonly known in higher ed as FERPA. And, I've said to a parent, hey, you don't have a FERPA release. What's that? And I have to, sorry, I have to go back. But it's very common. One of the parts of the admissions process at Harrisburg University is, we consult with the family and get them together and ask, do you want your parents to be able to have information? If so, you want to sign a FERPA release. So when we have a parent call in, try to be the friendly financial aid office. We can answer questions. We're not going direct, but the first thing I'm doing is checking to see if a FERPA release is on file, and if it is, they're privy to any, not necessarily any information, but we talked about you can have targeted FERPA. You know what I mean? I want my mom and dad to be able to help me with this, and this, but not see my grades. They usually work that out. You know what I mean? Because that's not going to work if depending on who's paying the bill.
Right.
Institutions are very aware of FERPA. It's a very important part of data privacy. We know that from a data privacy standpoint, from an ethical standpoint. We also know it from a regulation and compliance standpoint. Any hiccups there, we're going to get in trouble. So schools should be very strict about that.
Right. And I'm glad you mentioned, the reason I mentioned that is because I sometimes will get that phone call back from a parent to say, hey, you know, I tried to call the school, and would you believe they wouldn't give me any information? I mean, I'm paying the bill, or it's my kid, or they're my dependent. And I'm like, I get that. But I try to stress the importance of it, because again, they don't want anybody just calling up to say, hey, I am the parent. You know, there's a form the student can fill out that's going to give you access, but the goal is to protect their privacy while they're there. So again, it reiterates, you know, the importance of making sure their information is secure. Usually that calms the parent for probably 2 seconds, but you know, once they catch on, you know, they're totally fine.
And the conversation exactly goes there. I mean, a seasoned administrator or counselor, there's a good way to try to say what we're doing. I understand it's aggravating, and but we're doing it in the best interest of you and the student. So. You know, I encourage them to talk to their student to get a FERPA release if needed. I always try to still have a conversation with the parent.
Right.
And kind of the rule is, and I learned this at PHEAA, blank your screen and then talk to them. You know what I mean?
There you go.
So you can talk. You're not, you know, giving any information, and you know, sometimes we can answer general questions and still help. But I have a FERPA release. So.
There you go. And in all honesty, the parents really, most of them really do get it. They understand. It's just frustrating when they're trying to help their children get what they need. So I do get that point as well. But
and they always say I'm the one paying the bill.
Yeah, I'm the one paying the bill. Yep. So I totally understand where they're going with that. It's been a great discussion, I think. Any other key points on anything regarding data privacy that you think I missed, or you think it's important for our listeners to hear about?
I would say, just in celebration of 2023 Data Privacy Day, as you mentioned, that's an international celebration. Stay Safe Online is an organization that helps promote this international celebration of data privacy. They have some really helpful information out there, both for consumers and for businesses, to help promote data privacy across the landscape.
Pretty good information. Thank you both for joining me. But before I go, I'm going to reiterate also that there is an event called Celebrating 2023 Data Privacy Day. It's going to be held at Harrisburg University on January 27th. It's pretty much an all-day event from I think it starts at 9-ish to 4 or 5. The website, Harrisburg University's website, on their upcoming events tab has all of the key information for anyone who wants to do it. Chris, again, what's Harrisburg University's website?
harrisburgu.edu.
Okay, and the overall purpose for that is just to raise awareness and to promote privacy and data protection, to provide some best practices out there, because as consumers, no matter what role we are, just people in general, you do want to make sure that your information is safe, it's secure. If you are, hit by a scam, you want to know what you can do in order to recover safely and try to minimize that ever happening again. So again, I thank you both. Jennie, thank Chris.
Thank you.
For being here with us today. And here at the Higher Education Access Corner, we thank you for joining us, and have a good day.